Laura sat on that cold metal bench at Columbia Station, tears streaming down her face, watching commuters rush past like she was invisible. She had no family left. Her mother passed 2 years ago, and Aspinal had systematically isolated her from friends, convincing her his circle was their circle now. Those friends? They stopped returning calls the moment Aspinal filed for divorce. She was about to use her last $50 to buy a bus ticket to nowhere when a woman in an expensive navy suit approached. "Laura Hartwell?" the stranger asked. Laura looked up, confused, frightened. "I'm Elena Rodriguez, senior investigator with Rothman and Associates in New York. I've been searching for you for 6 months. Elena sat down, pulled out a leather briefcase, and said words that made Laura's world spin. "Your biological father, Richard Beaumont, a tech investor who died last year in Seattle, Washington, left you an estate worth $892 million. He'd been searching for you since you were born. But here's the twist that changes everything. And viewers, you need to hear this. Richard Beaumont wasn't just any investor. He was Aspinal's former business partner, the man who supposedly died in a boating accident off the Washington coast. The same man Aspinal had been secretly meeting in Atlanta." Elena leaned closer. "Laura, your husband knew exactly who you were before he ever approached you at that gala. This marriage was never about love." Comment below. Would you want revenge, or would you want answers first? He handed her $200, a suitcase, and divorce papers at the train station, then drove away in the Mercedes she helped him buy. The summer heat pressed down on the platform like a physical weight, asphalt shimmering under Carolina's sun. Her designer dress, the one Aspinal bought for their anniversary last month, clung to her back with sweat. The suitcase at her feet contained 8 years of marriage reduced to whatever he deemed hers. $200 cash, divorce papers signed by his attorney, and the crushing weight of a prenup she'd signed in trust. Laura Hartwell stood frozen at Columbia Amtrak Station, watching the black Mercedes disappear down Assembly Street. Her husband of 8 years hadn't even looked back. Her phone was dead, not battery dead, disconnected dead. 3 credit cards in her wallet, all denied at the ATM 30 minutes ago. Bank accounts frozen, email access revoked. He'd erased her systematically, professionally, like deleting a file. She trusted him with everything, her heart, her future, her signature on documents she never read. Have you ever loved someone so completely you ignored the warning signs? Tell me in the comments. The station bathroom mirror showed a stranger. Expensive highlights grown out to mousy brown roots. Manicured nails chipped from nervous picking. Designer clothes that suddenly felt like a costume. Who was she without his money, his name, his world? 3 weeks ago, they'd made love for the last time. Not love, duty. His hands moved over her body with the enthusiasm of someone checking items off a grocery list. Cold, mechanical, nothing like their beginning. What happens when the person who promised forever leaves you with nothing? A taxi pulled up. The driver quoted $50 to downtown. Laura counted her bills twice. $200 total. The math was brutal. One ride would take a quarter of everything she owned. But what Laura didn't know was that this betrayal would become her greatest weapon. She climbed in, gave an address she barely remembered. As they pulled away from the station, something clicked in her memory. The locked file cabinet in Aspinal's study, the one he thought she'd never noticed. The one she'd opened 6 months ago when suspicion first whispered his name alongside another woman's. She had copies of everything. She wore a borrowed dress to a millionaire's party and caught the attention of the richest man in the room. Crystal chandeliers threw diamonds of light across marble floors, where women in gowns worth more than her annual salary glided past champagne fountains. Laura adjusted her borrowed black dress, the one her coworker lent her for tonight's event coordination, and checked her watch. 2 hours until she could leave for her overnight shift at the hospital. Charleston's elite gathered for the annual Children's Medical Fund Gala at the Savannah waterfront venue. Laura worked the room, ensuring champagne glasses stayed full, appetizers circulated, and donors felt appreciated. Invisible labor that kept society running. She'd worked 3 jobs for the past 5 years. Event coordinator by day, hospital records clerk by night, weekend catering when she could manage it, all to cover her mother's cancer treatments and keep their North Charleston apartment. "Excuse me?" The voice came from behind, deep and warm. Laura turned. The man standing there wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, blue eyes that held genuine curiosity instead of the dismissive glances she'd grown used to from this crowd. "Champagne?" she offered, professional smile in place. "I'd rather know your name." Their hands touched when she handed him the glass. Electricity shot through her fingers, up her arm, straight to her chest. She pulled back quickly, but his eyes had already registered the connection. "Laura," she said finally. "Aspinal Hartwell?" He held her gaze. "You're not like them." The words dropped into her consciousness with unexpected weight. His voice carried something she couldn't name: interest, recognition. It sent warmth down her spine despite the air-conditioned ballroom. Around them, society's finest networked and posed for photographers. But Aspinal Hartwell through. Heir to the Hartwell real estate empire, stood talking to the help like she mattered. Have you ever met someone who seemed too good to be true? Someone who promised to change your world? Share your story below. When he asked for her number at the end of the night, Laura almost refused. She should have refused. Because the man who saves you can also be the one who destroys you. He pursued her like she was worth more than his millions. Flowers, handwritten notes, dates that felt like dreams she didn't dare believe. 24 roses arrived at the event planning office every Monday for 6 weeks straight. Not red, yellow, because he remembered her saying red felt too formal. The cards were handwritten, never generic. "Dinner Friday? I promised decent conversation and terrible dance moves." Laura kept refusing. Men like Aspinal Hartwell didn't date women like her, not seriously. She'd seen this before. Rich guy wants to feel charitable. Poor girl becomes his social experiment. But he kept showing up. At the coffee shop where she grabbed breakfast before her hospital shift. At the farmer's market where she bought groceries. Never pushy, always respectful, just there. "Give me one date," he finally said after 3 months. "If you hate it, I'll disappear." She said yes. Worst decision and best decision of her life. He took her to a small Italian restaurant in North Charleston, her neighborhood, not his. Drove himself instead of sending a car. Asked about her mother's health, her dreams, her favorite books. Listened like her words mattered more than his next meeting. 3 months later, her mother's cancer returned with a vengeance. Stage 4. 6 months without treatment, maybe 18 with aggressive therapy that insurance wouldn't cover. Rain drummed against the hospice window as Aspinal sat beside her mother's bed, holding the frail hand of a woman he'd known only 3 weeks. "Take care of my girl," her mother whispered, voice thin as paper. "She gives everything to everyone. Make sure someone finally gives back to her." He promised. Laura believed him. Their first night together happened in his penthouse overlooking Charleston Harbor. Gentle hands, whispered questions. "Is this okay?" Every step of the way. "I've never felt this way." He breathed against her neck, hands exploring with worship rather than possession. She surrendered completely, believing this was forever. "When did you know you were falling in love? Was it the grand gestures or the quiet moments?" Tell me what made you believe." 3 days after her mother's funeral, he proposed. The ring cost more than her mother's entire medical bills combined. Laura said yes through tears, not knowing she was signing away her future. 200 guests, a venue on the Charleston waterfront, and a prenuptial agreement she signed without reading because love doesn't question, it trusts. White silk billowed in the ocean breeze as Laura walked down an aisle lined with roses that cost more than her college tuition. Aspinal's eyes held promises that seemed unbreakable. 200 guests from Charleston's finest families watched the girl from North Charleston marry into old Southern money. His mother sat in the front row, lips pressed thin with disapproval. His father looked bored, but Aspinal only saw Laura, and that felt like enough. The attorney appeared an hour before the ceremony. Prenup in hand, pages thick with legal language, Laura couldn't parse through wedding day nerves and champagne. "Just a formality," Aspinal assured her, squeezing her hand. "My family insists. Standard stuff. It means nothing." She signed every page, trusting him completely. Didn't read the clause about assets. Didn't notice the part about no claim to property acquired before or during marriage. Didn't see the section that said she'd leave with exactly what she brought. Nothing. Love doesn't read the fine print. Love trusts. Have you ever signed something important without reading it because you trusted someone? Share below if you've learned this lesson the hard way. The ceremony was perfect. The reception felt like a fairy tale. And the honeymoon in the French Riviera stretched out like a promise of forever. Their wedding night in the honeymoon suite began with champagne and silk sheets. Aspinal removed her dress with deliberate slowness, hands tracing her skin with possessive certainty. "You're mine now," he whispered, voice thick with desire and something else she couldn't name. Possession? Ownership? She dismissed the thought, lost in sensation, in the belief that this man loved her enough to bind their lives together. On their third day in Nice, his phone rang during breakfast on the balcony. He took the call away from her, voice hushed, angry. "Who was that?" she asked when he returned. "Business," he smiled. "Nothing important." It was the first lie. She didn't catch it. She learned to be Mrs. Aspinal Hartwell III, the smile, the charity boards, the silence when his family made her feel like hired help. The country club brunch table fell silent when Laura mentioned her childhood in North Charleston. Aspinal's mother smiled, sharp as cut glass. "How quaint. Aspinal does love his charity projects." The other wives laughed, perfectly manicured hands covering perfectly practiced smiles. Laura's face burned hot with humiliation, but Aspinal said nothing, just squeezed her hand under the table. Comfort or warning, she couldn't tell anymore. 2 years into their marriage, Laura had learned the rules. Speak only when spoken to at family gatherings. Wear the clothes Aspinal selected. Serve on the charity boards his mother chose. Smile through condescension. Be grateful. She'd lost touch with her old friends. They couldn't afford the restaurants where Aspinal's circle ate. Couldn't relate to conversations about European vacations and investment portfolios. The divide grew wider each month until Laura existed in a world where she belonged nowhere, too poor for his people, too rich for hers. Their bedroom life changed too. What started as passion became routine, scheduled around his business trips, his golf games, his convenience. One night she initiated, wore the lingerie he used to love, lit candles, wanted spontaneity, connection, the man who'd once pursued her like she mattered. He checked his watch mid-kiss. "I have an early meeting, Laura." The rejection stung deeper than any of his mother's insults. She changed back into her nightgown, blew out the candles, and lay alone in their California king bed, wondering when she'd become an obligation instead of a desire. Have you ever changed yourself to fit someone else's world? Lost pieces of who you were to keep someone happy? Comment if you recognize this pattern. Year 3 of their marriage. His phone buzzed during dinner. She glanced at the screen before he could grab it. 2 words. Tonight. Usual. "Who's that?" she asked, heart already knowing. "Business partner," Aspinal said smoothly, deleting the message. "We're meeting about the Atlanta deal." But business partners don't send heart emojis. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off her now barely looked up from his phone when she entered the room. Their bedroom, 1,500 square feet of marital emptiness, felt colder each night despite Carolina summer heat. Aspinal slept with his back to her now, phone face down on the nightstand, password protected. She lay awake, counting ceiling shadows, wondering when exactly love had died and loneliness moved in. Years 4 through 6 of their marriage blurred together like a bad dream on repeat. Business trips multiplied. His excuses grew thinner. The space between them widened until they were strangers sharing an address. Laura tried everything. Couples therapy. He missed 3 sessions, canceled the 4th. Date nights. He showed up late, left early, checked his phone throughout dinner. Surprise weekend getaways. He brought his laptop, took calls during breakfast, fell asleep before she could reach for him. Their 6th anniversary arrived on a Tuesday. Laura planned for weeks, bought expensive lingerie from the boutique his mother recommended, set candles around the bedroom, chilled his favorite wine. Wore the perfume he'd bought her their first Christmas together. He came home 4 hours late. Perfume, not hers, clung to his collar. Lipstick, definitely not hers, smudged the corner of his mouth. He walked past the candles without noticing, past her in red lace without pausing. "I'm tired," he muttered, heading to the guest room. Laura sat alone in their bedroom. Red lace felt cheap against her skin. Candles burned down to nothing. Wine went warm in the bottle. Understanding finally settled in her chest like a stone. He was done with her. She'd lost herself trying to save a marriage that had died years ago. At what point do you stop fighting for a marriage? When do you realize you're the only one trying? Tell me your experience below. Tuesday morning, Laura made a decision. She hired a private investigator, used money from the household account Aspinal never checked, cost $2,000 for a week of surveillance. Friday afternoon, the investigator handed her an envelope. Photos spilled across the kitchen counter. Aspinal entering a downtown condo. Same building, same time. Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights. With her, a woman young enough to be Laura's daughter, beautiful enough to make Laura's heart crack. She hired a private investigator on Tuesday. By Friday, she had photos. Aspinal entering a downtown condo. The same condo, 3 nights a week, with her. She was younger, richer, and everything Laura used to be, before Aspinal's world hollowed her out. The photographs spread across her kitchen counter. Aspinal's hand on another woman's waist outside that downtown condo. Their kiss in a parking garage. Him laughing, actually laughing, in a way he hadn't with Laura in years. The investigator's report detailed everything. 3 years. The affair had lasted 3 whole years. While Laura played perfect wife, attending his mother's charity functions, hosting his business dinners, pretending their marriage wasn't dying, Genevieve Sterling played the real role. Banking heiress, 30 years old. Family owned half of Charleston's financial district. Everything Aspinal's family wanted in a daughter-in-law. Everything Laura wasn't. Old money, blue blood, the right schools, the right connections, the right pedigree. Laura studied the photos until her eyes burned. Genevieve was beautiful. Blonde hair, perfect smile, designer clothes that actually fit her life instead of feeling like a costume. But worse than her beauty was the way Aspinal looked at her. Hungry, alive, present. The way he used to look at Laura 8 years ago, before the prenup, before the marriage, before he'd secured her in a cage made of luxury and legal documents. How do you rebuild yourself when you discover your marriage was a lie? When the affair lasted longer than your real relationship? Share your strength below. Laura remembered their last intimate moment. 3 weeks ago, perfunctory and cold. Now she understood. He'd been comparing. Every time they were together, he was thinking of someone else. The humiliation burned deeper than betrayal. She'd given him 8 years, her youth, her trust, her body, her future. He'd given her lies. That night, Laura did something she'd never done before. She went through his car. Found the second phone tucked in the glove compartment. No password. He'd gotten careless, confident she was too broken to fight back. Messages going back 4 years. Not just Genevieve, others. So many others. But the worst discovery came in his email drafts. Plans to divorce Laura, written out in detail, dated 6 months ago. He'd been planning her destruction while she planned their anniversary. She found the second phone in his car. Messages going back 4 years. But it wasn't just Genevieve. There were others. And worse. Plans to divorce Laura, written out in detail, months ago. He'd been planning her destruction while she planned their anniversary. He didn't just fall out of love. He systematically destroyed her piece by piece, and she finally saw the blueprint. 3 months before the station, everything changed. Aspinal threw her laptop across their study, her writing, her photos, 8 years of memories shattered against mahogany walls. "You're pathetic," he spat, voice cold as January ocean. "You think you're entitled to my life because you married me? You came with nothing, Laura. Remember that." His eyes held no recognition of the woman he'd promised forever. Just contempt. Disgust. The look you'd give something stuck to your shoe. The verbal attacks came daily after that. Criticism at breakfast. Insults at dinner. Reminders that she was nothing without him, had nothing before him, would be nothing after him. His family joined in. His mother stopped pretending politeness. His father made jokes about charity cases. His sister asked loudly at Sunday brunch when Laura planned to go back where she came from. Laura started researching the prenup late at night, found a lawyer willing to review it confidentially, learned words like unconscionable and fraud in the inducement, discovered that contracts signed under pressure without proper disclosure could be challenged. Have you ever realized someone's been playing you the whole time, manipulating your trust into a weapon? Comment below if you've escaped this trap. The physical side got worse too. What had been cold became cruel. He'd come home drunk, force himself on her with brutal efficiency. No pretense of consent, no care if she wanted him or not. One night she said no. The rage in his eyes terrified her more than his words. "You don't get to say no. Read the prenup." That night, while he slept off the whiskey, Laura copied his hard drive. 3 years of financial records, business emails, text messages, bank statements showing accounts she'd never known existed. Everything. If he wanted to destroy her, she'd make sure he went down too. But first, she needed to survive the station. She copied his hard drive while he slept. 3 years of financial records, emails, messages. Everything. If he wanted to destroy her, she'd make sure he went down too. But first, she needed to survive the station. The divorce wasn't about falling out of love. It was about clearing the path for his real life, the one where she never existed. 2 weeks before he drove her to that station, the trap closed completely. The ATM screen flashed red. Account restricted. Laura tried 3 cards, all denied. The grocery cashier's pitying look said everything as Laura's card was declined for the 3rd time. She left the groceries and walked out. Outside, she called Aspinal from the parking lot. "Technical issue," he said smoothly. "Banking error. I'll handle it." Her phone died mid-call. Not battery dead, completely disconnected. When she tried to reactivate it at the store, the rep looked confused. Account closed 2 days ago. Number transferred to new owner. He was erasing her in real time. Email account, password changed, social media locked out, credit cards canceled. Even her driver's license address had been changed without her knowledge to some P.O. box she'd never seen. When did you realize the person you loved was actually your enemy? At what moment did survival become more important than love? Share your turning point. That night, Aspinal came home late, drunk, mean. He forced himself on her with brutal efficiency, no pretense of consent or care, just power, ownership, destroying any part of her that thought she mattered. Laura lay silent afterward, staring at the ceiling, understanding finally crystallizing. This was always the plan, the marriage, the prenup, the isolation. 8 years of slowly erasing her until nothing remained but the woman he could discard without consequences. The next morning, she found papers hidden in his safe. The one he didn't know she'd discovered the combination to months ago. Annulment papers, dated for their 2-year anniversary. He'd planned to erase their marriage entirely, but changed tactics. Why? The answer came in his email. Prenup's better. She gets nothing. I keep everything, including the moral high ground. She found the annulment papers hidden in his safe, dated for their 2-year anniversary. He'd planned to erase their marriage entirely, but changed tactics. Why? She found the answer in his email. Prenup's better. She gets nothing. I keep everything, including the moral high ground. He drove her to that station like delivering garbage, and she let him think she was broken, but she'd memorized every word of that prenup. The morning of abandonment started with coffee and silence. Aspinal had packed her suitcase himself, chose what she could take, what stayed behind. 8 years reduced to 1 bag. Car's waiting, he said. No emotion, just business. Highway 26 stretched ahead, 2 hours from Charleston to Columbia. 2 hours of Aspinal's silence punctuated by occasional cruelty. Genevieve's moving in next week, he said casually, eyes on the road. Her family actually approves. Old money recognizes old money. Laura stared out the window, letting him think tears meant defeat. But her mind worked differently now. Calculated, strategic. Every word he said was being recorded on the phone hidden in her purse, the old one he didn't know about. His confession, the affair, the financial abuse, the systematic destruction, all documented, all admissible in court. He reached across the console, hand on her thigh. Not affection, but final ownership. One last claim to what he thought he'd conquered. You were good in bed, he said, voice flat. I'll give you that. But that's all you were good for. Laura moved his hand away, voice steady, eyes dry. Then you'll miss me more than you think. The flicker of uncertainty in his eyes was almost worth the 8 years of hell. Have you ever let someone underestimate you because you knew it would be their downfall? Tell me about the moment you turned the tables. At the station, he handed her the envelope. Divorce papers signed by his attorney. $200 cash. The exact amount she'd had in her pocket the night they met. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. You came with nothing, he said. You leave with nothing. His Mercedes disappeared down Assembly Street, taillights fading in the summer heat. Laura pulled out her phone, the old one, and made a call. Jennifer Martinez Law Office. It's Laura Hartwell, she said. I'm ready to file. Use everything. At the station, he handed her the envelope. Divorce papers. $200. Finality. But as he drove away, she pulled out her phone, the old one he didn't know about, and made a call. I'm ready to file, she said. Use everything. She had nothing but the truth, and sometimes that's the most dangerous weapon of all. The shelter bed had thin sheets and springs that creaked, but Laura slept better than she had in months. No mansion, no silk pillows, no husband making her feel worthless in her own home. Just 23 other women who understood survival trumps luxury. Her donated clothes smelled like detergent and hope. 48 hours after Aspinal abandoned her at that station, Laura walked into Jennifer Martinez's law office with a flash drive and recordings that would change everything. Jennifer was young, mid-30s, sharp eyes, and a handshake that meant business. The nameplate on her desk said, Divorce and Family Law. The scar on her ring finger told a story Laura recognized. I've seen your prenup, Jennifer said, laying pages across her desk. Standard intimidation tactics, makes you think you have no rights. Laura handed over the flash drive. Financial records, 3 years' worth. Bank accounts he never disclosed, properties and offshore companies, emails planning my destruction, an audio of him admitting to the affair, the abuse, everything. Jennifer's expression shifted from professional to predatory. She smiled, the kind of smile that meant someone was about to get exactly what they deserved. What would you do with $200 and the truth? How would you fight back when someone took everything? Share your survival story below. Laura thought about their first night together 8 years ago. Tender, reverent, the man who'd treated her body like something precious. Then she remembered 3 weeks ago, cold, mechanical, degrading. Same man, completely different person. She understood now. The prenup wasn't protection, it was premeditation. He'd married her specifically because she had nothing, knowing he could destroy her completely. But he'd underestimated one thing. She'd learned to fight in ways he never taught her. Jennifer reviewed the evidence for 30 minutes. Finally looked up. This prenup has a fatal flaw, she said. He committed fraud in the inducement. Plus, she held up the financial records Laura copied. He's been hiding assets. We're not fighting for scraps. We're taking half of everything. While he celebrated her destruction with his mistress, Laura was building a case that would demolish his entire empire. The courthouse steps held more cameras than Laura expected. Local news, Carolina media outlets, even Atlanta stations. Word had spread fast. The trophy wife Aspinal Hartwell abandoned was fighting back. Jennifer coached her the night before. Head high, voice clear. Don't apologize for taking what's yours. The morning air felt electric as they approached the microphones. Mr. Hartwell presented a fraudulent prenuptial agreement to his wife, Jennifer told reporters, voice carrying across the courthouse plaza. We have evidence of hidden assets, systematic financial abuse, and coercion. Mrs. Hartwell wants what she's legally entitled to. Justice. Camera flashes exploded. Questions shouted from every direction. But Laura stood steady, no longer the woman who'd signed away her future without reading the fine print. The amended divorce petition filed that morning contained everything: financial fraud, emotional abuse, infidelity with documentation, hidden offshore accounts totaling $127 million, money he'd claimed didn't exist, while telling Laura she'd leave with nothing. Aspinal's attorney called within an hour. Your client needs to withdraw these allegations immediately. Jennifer laughed into the phone. Your client needs to prepare for discovery. We're just getting started. Have you ever watched someone who hurt you finally face consequences? What did justice look like for you? Tell me in the comments. That night, Laura's phone, the old one, rang 13 times, all Aspinal. She let it go to voicemail for the first 12 calls. On the 13th, she answered. Laura, let's talk about this. His voice held something new. Fear. We can work something out. You don't want to do this. She thought about 8 years of being told she was nothing. Worthless. A charity case who should be grateful. No, she said simply. We can't work anything out. See you in court. She hung up mid-sentence. The power shift was complete, her silence more devastating than his words ever were. Thursday morning brought the real bombshell. Jennifer called before sunrise. "You need to see this." Papers rustled on her end. Genevieve Sterling's father owns Aspinal's company debt, $50 million. The affair wasn't romance, Laura. It was a hostile takeover, and Aspinal destroyed you to secure the merger. She thought the affair was about love. It was about money, and Aspinal had been played harder than she was. Depositions revealed the truth like layers of a rotting onion. Aspinal's business had been failing 3 years ago, the exact timing of Genevieve's appearance. The Sterling family had bought his debt quietly, demanded control, then made their proposition clear. Marry our daughter, merge the families, or we bankrupt you. He'd chosen survival over love, destroying Laura to free himself for a transaction dressed as romance. The conference room fell silent as Aspinal's attorney read the Sterling family emails aloud. Cold, calculated, business terms for what should have been a relationship. "Genevieve will require full social calendar access," one email read. "The current wife must be removed cleanly. No scandal that damages our reputation." Laura sat across from Aspinal, watching him realize she knew everything. His face had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The man who'd driven her to that station with such satisfaction now looked defeated. "I didn't have a choice," he said quietly during a break. "They would have taken everything my family built." "You had a choice." Laura's voice stayed steady. "You chose money. You chose cruelty. You chose to destroy me rather than be honest. Would you forgive someone who destroyed you to save themselves? Where's the line between understanding and enabling? Share your perspective." She remembered their last real kiss, 5 years ago, before everything broke. He'd held her like she mattered. Now she understood. He'd loved her once, then chose money over her. The betrayal hurt less, knowing he'd betrayed himself first, sold his soul for a merger that wouldn't even save him. The Sterlings planned to gut his company regardless. Late afternoon, security called Jennifer. "Someone here to see Mrs. Hartwell. Says it's urgent." Aspinal stood in the lobby. Not angry, broken. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "I'll give you anything. Just help me stop the Sterlings from taking everything." Laura faced the man who abandoned her with $200 and divorce papers. The man who'd told her she came with nothing would leave with nothing. She made a choice that would define them both. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like walking away with exactly what you deserve. The conference room overlooked Charleston Harbor, neutral territory where their marriage began and ended. Early morning light turned the water gold, sailboats drifting past windows that cost more than most people's homes. Settlement papers stacked between Laura and Aspinal. $45 million. The waterfront property her mother loved. Full medical coverage for life. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And one non-negotiable term. He'd help dismantle the Sterling merger, even if it cost him everything. "You're protecting me," Aspinal said, something like wonder in his voice. "After everything I did. I'm protecting what you should have valued from the start." Laura signed the first page. Honesty, integrity, the idea that people aren't disposable. Jennifer had advised taking more. The courts would have given it. But Laura didn't want to become what destroyed her. Didn't want money built on cruelty. What's more important, making someone pay or setting yourself free? When did you choose peace over revenge? Share your wisdom below. The signing took 30 minutes. Each page a year of marriage erased, rewritten, redefined. His ended 34 years of family legacy. The company would survive, but the Hartwells would no longer control it. Hers began a life she'd build herself, final moment alone before walking away. He touched her hand, not possession, but goodbye. "I loved you once," he said. I know, she replied. But love without respect is just pretty words. She pulled her hand away, the last time they'd ever touch. Outside, Jennifer waited by the car. You could have buried him. I'm not interested in graves, Laura said. Just freedom. 3 months later, Laura stood before a crowd of domestic violence survivors at a community center in Columbia. Her story, minus the money plus the truth, resonated with women who understood what it meant to be erased. In the back row, a woman took notes, older, elegant, something familiar about her face. After the speech, the woman approached. I'm Catherine, she said. Catherine Hartwell. Aspinal tried to marry me 12 years ago. Before you. Laura's breath caught. What happened? I read the prenup. Catherine smiled sadly. And I ran. She came with nothing, left with everything that mattered, dignity, strength, and the knowledge that she'd survived the worst and found herself again. 1 year later, the event center in North Charleston, her old neighborhood, buzzed with women's voices sharing survival stories. Laura's organization, worth more than paper, offered free legal counsel for prenuptial review, financial literacy courses, exit planning for trapped spouses. The venue cost exactly $200 to rent, the same amount Aspinal gave her at that station. She'd multiplied it into freedom for thousands. Catherine Hartwell served on the board. Jennifer Martinez ran the legal clinic. 23 women from the shelter volunteered, and every Tuesday, Laura taught a class. Reading the fine print, protecting yourself in relationships. The walls displayed photos of women who'd escaped, testimonials from survivors who'd rebuilt their lives, resources for those still planning their exit, and one quote, hand-painted above the entrance. You came with everything. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Laura's phone buzzed. Not the old one, but new with her own plan, her own name. A text from someone she'd been seeing casually. David. A divorce attorney who understood survival, who moved through the world with kindness instead of conquest. Coffee after the event? He'd written. She smiled, typing back. Yes. So what would you have done in her shoes? Would you have fought back, walked away, or burned it all down? Comment below and tell me, because every woman's story matters and every survival is worth celebrating. His hand on the small of her back later felt different than Aspinal's ever did. This touch asked permission. This touch saw her as equal. This touch understood that love builds up instead of tearing down. They talked until the coffee shop closed, then walked along the harbor where she'd once signed away her future. The same water. Different woman. The girl who'd trusted blindly had become someone who trusted wisely. David asked about her plans. Laura told him about expansion. Chapters in Atlanta, Savannah, Columbia. Women helping women understand their worth before signing contracts that could destroy them. You're changing lives, he said. I'm just making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to them. Aspinal had sent one letter since the settlement. No apology, just information. He'd walked away from his family's business entirely, was working in construction now, building instead of destroying, learning maybe what it meant to create value instead of taking it. Laura didn't respond. Some chapters close without epilogues. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true stories about strength, survival, and second chances. And remember, the person who leaves you with nothing often teaches you that you needed nothing to be complete. You were always whole. They just made you forget.